For 26 years, a mystery man appeared in Kansas City every December, handing out $100 bills to complete strangers. Over $1.3 million given away. No names, no cameras, no explanation. Then in 2006, dying from cancer, he finally revealed himself, and the reason why shattered every heart in America. Because this legend, this man who changed thousands of lives, started with just $23 and a decision that should have destroyed him. December 1979, a man sits alone in his car outside a roadside diner, broke, desperate, fired for the second Christmas in a row, thinking about walking out without paying for his meal. That's how low he'd fallen. $23 left to his name. Then he sees her. A waitress, shivering in the freezing wind, her jacket too thin. Serving customers outside because that's where the tips are. He's starving, humiliated, barely surviving. But watching her changes something. He walks up, orders the cheapest item, and when she brings it, he hands her a $20 bill. Keep the change. Her lips tremble. Tears pour down her face. She stares at him like he just saved her life and whispers, "Sir, you have no idea what this means to me." That moment changed everything. This is the true story of Robert Mitchell, the man Kansas City called Secret Santa for nearly 3 decades, a broken man who turned one frozen night into a legacy that still lives today. And this is how it all began. Before we continue deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Robert Mitchell wasn't born wealthy. He grew up in Bruce, Mississippi, in a house where dinner sometimes meant bread, and whatever vegetables his mother could grow in their small backyard. His father worked at the mill until an accident left him unable to work. Robert learned early that the world doesn't care about your circumstances. You either make it or you don't. He made it. By his mid-30s, Robert had built a telecommunications business from nothing, turning it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. He had money, respect, everything he'd worked for. But wealth has a funny way of insulating you from the world. You stop noticing the people who are struggling because you're no longer one of them. Until suddenly, you are. In 1978, Robert's business partner embezzled nearly everything. The company collapsed. Robert lost his job right before Christmas. He spent that holiday season watching his savings evaporate, sending out resumes that went unanswered, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. He thought the next year would be different. It wasn't. 1979 brought the same story, another job, another firing right before the holidays. This time, he didn't have savings to fall back on. He was living in a cramped apartment, eating ramen noodles, and avoiding phone calls from creditors. On that December afternoon in 1979, sitting in his car outside that diner, he was at his lowest point. That's when he decided to give away his last $20. The moment that the waitress started crying, something fundamental changed in Robert. He suddenly understood something he'd never grasped when he was wealthy. Money means nothing until you see what it can do for someone who really needs it. He drove away from that diner, feeling something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Purpose. That night, he made himself a promise. If he ever got back on his feet, he would spend every Christmas doing what he'd just done. He would find people who needed help and give it to them, no questions asked, no recognition required. It seemed impossible at the time. He barely had enough money to feed himself. But sometimes the promises we make when we have nothing are the ones we keep forever. 2 months later, Robert got a call about a job opportunity in cable television. The industry was exploding, and someone remembered his name from his previous work. Within a year, he'd rebuilt his career. Within 3 years, he'd started his own company. By the mid-1980s, Robert Mitchell was a millionaire again. This time, He didn't forget where he'd come from. Christmas 1980 was the first year Robert went out as Secret Santa. He drove to the poorest parts of Kansas City with a pocket full of $100 bills. He found a woman at a laundromat, a single mother washing clothes, while her 3 kids sat on folding chairs doing homework. He walked up, handed her $500, and walked away before she could say anything. He found a man at a thrift store buying a winter coat, 3 sizes too big because it was all he could afford. Robert bought him one that fit and handed him $200 in cash. He found an elderly couple at a bus stop, waiting in the cold because they couldn't afford to fix their broken heater. He gave them enough money to pay for repairs and their groceries for the month. Every single time, the reaction was the same: shock, tears, disbelief. And every single time, Robert felt something he'd never felt when he was spending money on himself. He felt alive. He kept it completely secret. He didn't tell his business partners, didn't tell his friends, didn't even tell his own family. The only person who knew was his wife, Margaret, who supported him without question. She understood that this wasn't about charity in the traditional sense. This was about something deeper. This was about making sure that what happened to him in that diner parking lot in 1979 happened to as many people as possible. Year after year, Robert returned to the streets every December. He went to homeless shelters and handed out cash to families living in temporary housing. He went to hospitals and gave money to people struggling with medical bills. He went to grocery stores and paid for strangers' carts when they were trying to decide what items to put back because they didn't have enough money. He went to gas stations and handed bills to people, counting change to fill their tanks. Sometimes he gave away $10,000 in a season, sometimes $30,000. Some years, when business was especially good, he gave away more than $100,000. He never kept track. That wasn't the point. The rules were simple. He only gave cash, never checks, because he wanted people to have immediate access to the money without having to wait or explain themselves to a bank. He never asked for anything in return, not even a thank you. He never told anyone his real name. He dressed simply, usually in a red jacket or sweater, sometimes with a Santa hat during the actual Christmas season. He moved quickly through neighborhoods, handing out bills and disappearing before crowds could form. And most importantly, he never, ever revealed his identity. The legend grew. Local news stations started reporting on the mysterious man giving away money every December. Newspapers ran stories about Secret Santa sightings. People started looking for him, hoping they might be one of the lucky ones. But Robert was careful. He changed his routes, varied his timing, never established a pattern. He wasn't doing this for attention. He was doing it because of a promise he'd made to himself when he had nothing. The truth is, Robert was lonely. His business consumed most of his time. Margaret had passed away in 1995 after a long illness, and he'd thrown himself into work to cope with the grief. He had business associates, but few close friends. No children. The holidays, which had once been filled with Margaret's warmth and laughter, now felt hollow. Going out as Secret Santa became the one thing that made him feel connected to something larger than himself. It was the only time of year when he felt like he was doing exactly what he was meant to do. He saw himself in the people he helped, the single mother counting change to buy her kids Christmas presents, the man who'd just been laid off and didn't know how he'd pay rent, the elderly woman choosing between heating her home and buying groceries. They were all versions of who he'd been in 1979, sitting in that car, wondering if he'd ever get his life back. But something was changing inside Robert. In early 2006, he started feeling tired all the time. His doctor ordered tests. The diagnosis came back quickly: esophageal cancer, advanced stage. The prognosis wasn't good. Robert was 57 years old, and he was running out of time. He'd kept his secret for 26 years. Now, facing his mortality, he had to make a decision. Should he take the secret to his grave, or should he reveal himself and ensure that someone would continue the tradition after he was gone? In November 2006, Robert did something he'd never done before. He called a local television station and told them he wanted to reveal his identity. The story broke just before Thanksgiving. Kansas City's Secret Santa, the man who'd given away more than $1.3 million over 2.5 decades, was Robert Mitchell, a telecommunications executive who'd spent most of his adult life quietly changing people's lives. The response was overwhelming. News outlets from across the country picked up the story. Oprah Winfrey featured him on her show. Letters poured in from people he'd helped over the years, people who wanted to thank him, people who said his gift had kept them from losing their home, or dropping out of school, or giving up entirely. But Robert didn't reveal himself for recognition. He did it because he wanted to recruit others to carry on the mission. He appeared on television and radio shows, urging wealthy individuals to become secret Santas in their own communities. He said something in those interviews that stuck with people. It's not about the money. It's about restoring someone's faith in humanity for just a moment. It's about reminding them that there are still people out there who care. If this part is making sense, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who's really paying attention to this incredible story. December 2006 was Robert's last Christmas as Secret Santa. He was weak from chemotherapy, but he insisted on going out one more time. With the help of friends who'd agreed to become Secret Santas themselves, he spent that holiday season in Kansas City, giving away money as he always had. This time, people recognized him. They hugged him, thanked him, told him what his gift had meant years earlier. He met a woman who said the money he'd given her 15 years ago had allowed her to keep her electricity on during winter when she had 2 sick children at home. He met a man who said Robert's gift had paid for the gas he needed to drive to a job interview that changed his life. He met families, elderly couples, students, veterans, all people whose lives had been touched by a moment of unexpected kindness. Robert Mitchell passed away on January 12, 2007, just weeks after that final Christmas. He was 58 years old. The city of Kansas City mourned him like they'd lost one of their own, because in many ways they had. But Robert's legacy didn't end with his death. In the years since, dozens of Secret Santas have emerged across the country, inspired by his example. They go out every December, wearing red, handing out cash to people who need it, keeping their identities hidden, continuing the tradition Robert started in 1980. In Kansas City alone, multiple Secret Santas now operate every Christmas season, collectively giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the real legacy isn't the money, it's the ripple effect. One of the most beautiful things Robert used to say was that he never just gave people money and walked away. He would tell them, "All I ask is that you do something kind for someone else when you get the chance." And people did. The woman whose electricity bill he paid went on to volunteer at a homeless shelter. The man whose gas tank he filled started a community food bank. The single mother he helped put herself through nursing school and now works at a free clinic. Every person Robert helped became a carrier of his philosophy. That kindness is meant to be passed on, not hoarded. So what was Robert Mitchell really? Was he a billionaire who found redemption in giving? Was he a lonely man trying to fill the void left by personal loss? Was he someone who never forgot what it felt like to have nothing and spent the rest of his life making sure others didn't feel that way for long? The truth is, he was all of those things. He was human, flawed, complicated, driven by memories both painful and transformative. But he was also proof that a single moment of kindness, even when you have almost nothing to give, can plant a seed that grows into something extraordinary. Think about the waitress in 1979. She never knew that her tears that night would inspire a movement that would touch thousands of lives. She never knew that a stranger's last $20 would eventually multiply into more than $1 million given to people in need. She never knew that her simple words, "You have no idea what this means to me," would echo in Robert's mind for the rest of his life, guiding every decision he made about how to use his wealth. And maybe that's the most powerful part of this story. We never know which moments will matter. We never know which small act of kindness will be the one that changes everything. That's why we have to treat every moment like it matters, because it just might. Before we close, I want to ask you something. If you were in Robert's position in 1979, sitting in that car with your last $20, would you have given it away? And if you're in a position now where you have something to give, whether it's money, time, attention, or just a kind word to someone who needs it, will you? Robert Mitchell's story isn't just about one man's journey from poverty to wealth to legacy. It's a reminder that the best thing we can do with whatever we have is to use it to make someone else's burden a little lighter. It's about understanding that we're all one bad break away from needing help, and we're all one good choice away from being someone's miracle. So here's my challenge to you. Don't wait until you're wealthy to start giving. Don't wait until you have everything figured out. Robert was broke when he gave away that $20. He had nothing, and he gave it away anyway, because something inside him understood that connection matters more than comfort. Find someone who needs what you have to offer and give it freely. Maybe it's paying for the coffee of the person behind you in line. Maybe it's giving your coat to someone who's cold. Maybe it's just sitting with someone who's lonely and listening to their story. Whatever it is, do it without expecting anything in return. Do it because Robert Mitchell proved that when we give without conditions, we start something that never really ends. We become part of a chain of kindness that stretches forward into a future we'll never see, touching lives we'll never know, creating moments of hope in places where hope was running out. That's Robert's real legacy. Not the money, not the legend, but the undeniable proof that one person, armed with nothing more than empathy and a willingness to act on it, can change the world. Robert Mitchell wasn't a saint. He was just a man who remembered what it felt like to be desperate and who decided that no one else should feel that way alone. And that, more than anything else, is why Kansas City will never forget him. Because he reminded them that in a world that often feels cold and indifferent, there are still people who care. There are still moments of unexpected grace. There are still reasons to believe in each other. So let me ask you one more time. What will your legacy be? Will you wait until you have more time, more money, more security? Or will you start now, with whatever you have, wherever you are? Because the truth that Robert Mitchell discovered in 1979, the truth that guided the rest of his life, is this: the moment you have enough to help someone else, you have enough. You don't need to be wealthy. You don't need to have it all together. You just need to be willing to see the need and meet it, even when it costs you something. That's how legends are born. Not from perfection, but from compassion. Not from grand gestures, but from consistent, quiet acts of love. Robert Mitchell turned one cold December night into a legacy that still lives today. He took the worst moment of his life and transformed it into the catalyst for thousands of better moments in other people's lives. He proved that Christmas isn't about what's under the tree. It's about what's in our hands and whether we're willing to open them and give. So comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness, or about a time you were able to help someone who needed it. Let's keep this conversation going. Because stories like Robert's only matter if they inspire us to create our own stories of generosity and grace. And if you found this story meaningful, if it reminded you of something important, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next story. Because there are more stories like this out there. More people doing extraordinary things in quiet ways. And they deserve to be told. Robert Mitchell spent 26 years hiding his identity, but his impact was impossible to hide. Your impact doesn't have to be hidden either. Start where you are. Use what you have. Help who you can. That's how you become someone's secret Santa. That's how you change the world. Thank you for watching. Merry Christmas, and remember, you have no idea what your kindness might mean to someone.